The stars looked different from this far out, Captain William Carter thought as he stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Intrepid. After 3 months of pushing beyond the Kuiper Belt, the familiar patterns of stars had shifted. It was beautiful, but also slightly unsettling. "Captain, I'm picking up something unusual," said Lisa Rodriguez, leaning forward at her communications console. Her dark eyes narrowed as she adjusted settings on her display. "Definitely not natural. Signal pattern. Suggests artificial origin." William moved to her station, looking over her shoulder. The Intrepid wasn't a warship. It was an exploration vessel, the pride of Earth's young space fleet. Its mission was simple: reach farther into the unknown, gather data, and return home safely. "Can you clean it up?" he asked, watching as she worked to isolate the signal from the background noise of space. "Working on it, sir. Wait." Lisa suddenly sat up straight. "Sir, it's changing. The signal is getting stronger. I think something's approaching." William turned to the main view screen. "Put it up." The screen shifted, stars sliding away as the computer focused on a distant point of light that was definitely not a star. It was moving, and it was moving toward them. "All stations, yellow alert," William said calmly, though his heart had begun to race. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. They might be about to find out. "Dr. Harris, what are we looking at?" Daniel Harris, the ship's science officer, was already scanning the approaching object. "Definitely artificial, Captain. Size suggests a vessel roughly half our size. Materials unknown. Not matching anything in our database." He looked up, eyes wide behind his glasses. "Sir, we're about to make first contact." The bridge fell silent. They had trained for this moment, but training was one thing. Reality was another. "Communications, prepare first contact package," William ordered. The package contained basic mathematical sequences, images of humans, and simple greeting messages. The universal language they hoped any intelligent species would understand. The object grew larger on the screen, its shape becoming clearer. It was sleek, with curves that seemed almost organic. Unlike the more practical designs of Earth vessels, its surface shimmered with a bluish-purple metal that somehow absorbed and reflected light at the same time. "Beautiful," someone whispered on the bridge. "Package ready, sir," Lisa said. "Send it." William straightened his uniform. "And open a channel. Let's try to talk." Lisa nodded and pressed a series of commands. "Channel open." William took a deep breath. "This is Captain William Carter of the Earth vessel Intrepid. We come in peace as explorers from the third planet of the Sol system. We wish to establish friendly contact." They waited. Seconds stretched into a minute. "No response, sir," Lisa said. "Keep the channel open. Send the package again." The alien ship was close enough now that they could see details of its hull. There were no windows, no visible entry points. It was as if the entire vessel had been grown rather than built. "Sir?" Susan Miller called from the engineering station, her voice tight with concern. "I'm detecting a power surge from the alien vessel. Energy readings are spiking." William frowned. What kind of energy? He never got an answer. A brilliant beam of light shot from the alien ship, striking the Intrepid with devastating force. The bridge shook violently, throwing crew members from their stations. Alarms blared as red emergency lighting bathed everything in a bloody glow. "Shields at 30%, shouted Jack Wilson from security, pulling himself back to his console. "Direct hit to our port side." "Return fire," William ordered, holding onto his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "We can't, sir. Weapon systems are offline." William felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. They weren't prepared for this. The Intrepid was an explorer, not a battleship. "Evasive maneuvers." "Lisa, send distress signal to Earth. Maximum priority." Lisa worked frantically at her console. "Sending now, sir. But our communications array is damaged. I don't know if it's getting through." The alien vessel fired again. This time the impact sent a power surge through the bridge systems. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. William was thrown across the bridge, crashing hard against a bulkhead. Through blurred vision, he saw his crew fighting to save their ship, even as systems failed around them. They're moving alongside us, Daniel reported, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. I think they're preparing to board. William forced himself to his feet. Security teams to all decks. Everyone arm yourselves. We're not giving up this ship without a fight. But it was already too late. The alien ship had locked onto them with some kind of energy field. The Intrepid shuddered as its hull was breached in multiple locations. They're cutting through the hull, Susan shouted from engineering. Deck 3, Sections 7 through 12, William picked up a fallen weapon. Lisa, keep trying to get that distress signal out. Everyone else prepare to repel boarders. The doors to the bridge sealed automatically as the ship's security protocols engaged. They could hear weapons fire in the corridors beyond, the sound of the security teams engaging the invaders. The sounds grew closer. Then silence. What happened? Daniel whispered. The answer came as the bridge doors suddenly glowed red hot. Something was burning through them. Lisa, tell me that signal got through, William said quietly. Lisa looked up from her damaged console, her face lit by sparks from broken wiring. I think so, Captain. But it'll take time for Earth to receive it, even longer to send help. The doors began to melt, revealing figures on the other side. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with smooth gray-purple skin that matched their ship. Their eyes were large, solid black, and they moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost predatory. Everyone behind me, William ordered, raising his weapon. He knew it was futile, but surrender wasn't an option, not when the aliens had attacked without provocation. The first alien stepped through the melted doorway. It looked at the humans with what might have been curiosity or contempt. It was impossible to read its alien features. William fired. The energy blast struck the alien squarely in the chest, but it simply absorbed the impact. The alien tilted its head, then raised its own weapon. Earth will know what happened here, William said defiantly. They'll be ready for you. The alien fired in a hidden escape pod jettisoned during the chaos of the boarding. 3 survivors huddled in darkness. Engineer Susan Miller, Security Officer Jack Wilson, and Science Officer Daniel Harris watched through a small viewport as their ship, their home, was torn apart by the alien vessel. The signal got through, Susan whispered fiercely. It had, too. 72 million miles away at Solar System Defense Command, Admiral Ellen Foster was awakened by an urgent message. As she listened to the fragmented distress call from the Intrepid, her face grew pale. Humanity had just met its first alien civilization, and they were hostile. The war that would make the galaxy fear even the whisper of human had begun. 6 months passed since the destruction of the Intrepid. 6 months of frantic preparation. 6 months of humanity coming to terms with the fact that they were not alone in the universe, and that their neighbors wanted them dead. Admiral Ellen Foster stood in the command center of the moon base Armstrong, watching the holographic display with tired eyes. She hadn't slept properly in days. None of them had. They're here, said her second-in-command, Commander Paul Nelson. His voice was quiet but carried across the silent room. The display showed hundreds of ships appearing at the edge of the solar system. The Zolaxians, that's what they called themselves according to the data recovered from the Intrepid's escape pod, had arrived in force. How many? Ellen asked, though she could see the answer for herself. 327 warships, Paul answered. Our fleet number's 42. Someone whispered a prayer. Ellen didn't blame them. What about the colonies? She asked. Europa and Mars are on full alert. Titan has begun emergency evacuations, but they won't finish in time. Ellen nodded, then straightened her shoulders. Send the alert to Earth. It's time to implement the Jupiter strategy. Earth's hastily assembled defense force had been preparing for this moment. Humanity's ships were fewer and less advanced than the alien armada, but Ellen had a plan. They would use Jupiter's massive gravity well to their advantage, executing quick hit-and-run attacks before retreating to safety. As orders went out, Ellen's thoughts turned to the 3 survivors from the Intrepid. Engineer Susan Miller and Security Officer Jack Wilson had been crucial in helping design countermeasures against Zolaxian weapons. Science Officer Daniel Harris was still working with the research team, trying to understand the aliens' technology. The first battle for the solar system began 12 hours later. Human ships darted from behind Jupiter's moons, firing their newly enhanced weapons at the approaching alien fleet. The Zolaxians, clearly not expecting such resistance, lost 7 ships in the first attack, but the victory was short-lived. The aliens quickly adapted, spreading their forces to cut off escape routes. 3 human vessels were destroyed trying to retreat. "They're learning our tactics too fast," Ellen told her war council later that day. "We need to keep changing our approach." Despite valiant efforts, the outer defenses began to crumble. The Titan colony fell first, its few military vessels overwhelmed by the Zolaxian advance. The civilian evacuation ships were still halfway to Mars when the colony's dome was breached. 10,000 lives snuffed out in an instant. Europa was next. The Ice Moon's underground city held out for 3 days before Zolaxian forces drilled through the protective ice sheet. The defenders fought street by street, but the outcome was never in doubt. On Earth, cities began preparations for possible invasion. People fled to the countryside or into hastily constructed underground shelters. Families were torn apart as military-age citizens were called to service. In a bunker beneath what was once Washington, D.C., President Samantha Powell addressed the nation. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow, but her voice remained strong. "Fellow citizens of Earth, we face the greatest threat in human history," she said. "The Zolaxian forces have taken our outer colonies and now approach Mars. I will not lie to you. Our situation is grave. But humanity has faced extinction before, from ice ages to plagues to our own foolish wars. Each time, we have survived. We will survive this too." Her words brought comfort to some, but reality soon crushed that small hope. Mars fell after a week of brutal fighting. The Red Planet's defenses, though stronger than the outer colonies, were still no match for the Zolaxian armada. With Mars captured, the aliens established a forward base for their assault on Earth. Refugees who managed to escape told harrowing stories of Zolaxian cruelty, of humans being experimented on, of resources being stripped without care for the environment, of a conqueror that viewed humans as little more than animals. Back at Moonbase Armstrong, Admiral Foster received the reports with growing dread. Their fleet was down to 26 ships. The Zolaxians had lost almost 100, but they could afford the losses. Humanity could not. "We need to pull back to Earth orbit," Commander Nelson advised. "Make our final stand protecting the homeworld." Ellen nodded slowly. "Send the order, and contact Dr. Clark at the Himalaya facility. I want to know if his research team has made any progress." Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, in a facility unknown to most of humanity, Dr. Andrew Clark worked tirelessly alongside his wife, Dr. Patricia Clark. They led a team studying captured Zolaxian technology and the few alien bodies recovered from downed ships. "The neural implants are the key," Patricia said, pointing to a scan of a Zolaxian brain. "Every one of them has these devices connected to their central nervous system." Andrew frowned. "Some kind of communication system?" "More than that. I think it's how they coordinate so effectively in battle. A hive mind of sorts, but one that leaves individual consciousness intact." She looked up at her husband, a spark of hope in her eyes for the first time in weeks. "And I think I've found a weakness." Before she could explain further, an alert sounded. The facility's director, Olivia Green, rushed into the lab. "The Zolaxians have begun their attack on Earth," she said, her voice tight with fear. "They've hit major cities on every continent. London is gone, so is Beijing. New York is under heavy bombardment." Patricia clutched her husband's arm. "We need more time." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Andrew replied. On the lunar base, Admiral Foster watched in horror as Earth burned. Zolaxian ships moved through the atmosphere unchallenged, dropping bombs on population centers. The human fleet engaged, them wherever possible, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. "We just received a message from the Himalaya facility," Commander Nelson reported. Dr. Clark says they've discovered something important about the enemy's neural implants. For the first time in days, Ellen felt a glimmer of hope. Tell them to send everything they have, and order all remaining ships to protect that facility. At all costs, the battle for Earth raged on. Cities fell. Millions died. The human fleet was reduced to a handful of ships, each damaged but fighting on with desperate courage. President Powell, now operating from a mobile command center, authorized a desperate plan. If Dr. Clark's discovery proved useful, they would implement Operation Thunderclap, a coordinated attack using the Zalaxians' weakness against them. In the Himalaya facility, Patricia worked frantically to finish her research as explosions shook the mountain above. The Zalaxians had found them. It's their frequency, she told her husband as they rushed to secure their data. The neural implants operate on a specific electromagnetic wavelength. If we can broadcast a disrupting signal on that frequency, Andrew's eyes widened as he understood. We could disable their entire command structure. Patricia nodded grimly. But we need to get this information to what's left of our military. Someone has to make it out of here. Outside the lab, they could hear weapons fire. The facility's defenders were buying them time with their lives. I'll upload everything to the secure server, Andrew said. You get to the emergency shuttle. Patricia started to protest, but Andrew silenced her with a kiss. Humanity needs this information more than it needs me. Go. As Patricia reluctantly headed for the escape route, Andrew transferred their findings to the resistance network. His hands moved quickly across the controls, even as the lab door began to glow red from Zalaxian cutting tools. The upload completed just as the door fell. Andrew turned to face the tall alien figures entering the lab. You're too late, he said simply. We've found your weakness. The lead Zalaxian raised its weapon. Andrew closed his eyes, thinking of Patricia and hoping she would make it to safety. 18 months into the war, Earth's population had been reduced to less than 1 billion. But a plan was forming, a desperate gamble that might just save what remained of humanity. The hidden bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains shook as another Zalaxian bomber passed overhead. Maps and displays flickered on the walls, showing the remains of human resistance across the globe. Red dots marked Zalaxian strongholds. There were many red dots. President Samantha Powell stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by what remained of Earth's military leadership. Her face was lined with 18 months of grief and stress, but her eyes remained sharp. Dr. Clark's data has been confirmed, she said, nodding to the woman standing beside her. Patricia Clark looked nothing like the brilliant scientist she had been before the war. Her clothes were worn, her face thin from too many missed meals. Since escaping the Himalaya facility with her husband's research, she had worked without rest to develop a weapon against the Zalaxians. The neural implants are their greatest strength and their greatest weakness, Patricia explained, pointing to diagrams on the main screen. They allow the Zalaxians to communicate and coordinate with perfect efficiency, but they're also vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Admiral Ellen Foster, one of the few surviving fleet commanders, stepped forward. How vulnerable? Complete neural shutdown, Patricia answered. In theory, a strong enough pulse at this frequency could disable every Zalaxian within range. A murmur ran through the room. For the first time in months, there was hope. But there's a catch, Patricia continued. We need to broadcast the signal from their command ships. Our transmitters aren't powerful enough to affect their entire force. The room fell silent again. The Zalaxian command ships were the most heavily guarded vessels in the alien fleet. So we need to get a team onto one of their ships, President Powell said, her voice steady. How do we do that? Major Ryan Phillips, leader of the few remaining special forces, spoke up. We have 3 captured Zalaxian shuttles. They're damaged, but Dr. Miller thinks they can be repaired enough for a one-way trip. Susan Miller nodded from her place near the back wall. The engineer from the Intrepid had become one of Earth's most valuable assets, her understanding of alien technology saving countless lives. With some modifications, yes, Susan confirmed. But they'll only hold small teams and there's no guarantee the Zalaxians won't detect the human pilots. We'll need a distraction, Ryan said. Something big enough to draw their attention away from a few small shuttles. Ellen looked thoughtful. The lunar base, we've been using it as a staging area for raids. If we launched an all-out attack from there, it might give your teams the opening they need. President Powell surveyed the faces around her. This is the last roll of the dice, she said quietly. If this fails, humanity falls. Is everyone clear on what's at stake? They all nodded. They had been living with the end of the world for 18 months. They knew exactly what was at stake. Then we proceed with Operation Thunderclap, she declared. God help us all. The next week was a blur of preparation. Susan worked day and night to repair the Zalaxian shuttles. Patricia fine-tuned the electromagnetic pulse device with help from the few remaining scientists. Ryan trained his strike teams relentlessly, knowing that only perfect execution would give them a chance. Olivia Green, who had escaped the Himalaya facility with Patricia, was assigned to Ryan's team for her expertise in communications. Her job would be to upload the virus that would trigger the Zalaxians' neural implants. I've never been in combat, she admitted to Ryan during a rare break in training. Ryan handed her a cup of synthetic coffee. None of us were soldiers before this war, he said. We're all just doing what needs to be done. Olivia nodded, sipping the bitter liquid. For Andrew, she said softly, thinking of Patricia's husband who had sacrificed himself to get them this chance. For all of them, Ryan agreed. The day of the operation arrived with grim finality. The 3 strike teams gathered in the hangar bay, where the alien shuttles waited. Family members and friends came to say goodbye, knowing the mission was likely one way. Admiral Foster addressed the teams before they boarded. The lunar base will launch its attack in exactly 6 hours. That's your window to get aboard their command ships. Ryan nodded to his fellow team leaders. See you on the other side. The shuttles lifted off under cover of darkness. Susan had done remarkable work. The alien engines hummed with barely a whisper as they rose through the atmosphere. In each shuttle, human pilots wore modified Zolaxian environment suits, hoping to fool any visual sensors they might encounter. As the shuttles reached orbit, they saw the scale of the occupation. Hundreds of Zolaxian ships hung in Earth's orbit, drawing resources from the planet below. The aliens were strip mining entire continents, caring nothing for the ecological damage they caused. Ready for Phase 2, Ryan said into his comm unit. The 3 shuttles separated, each heading toward a different Zolaxian command ship. Ryan's team targeted the main flagship, a massive vessel 10 times the size of anything humans had built. 6 hours later, right on schedule, the lunar base sprung to life. The remaining human warships burst from hiding places around the moon, weapons blazing. It was a desperate, suicidal attack, but it served its purpose. Zolaxian ships moved to intercept, leaving gaps in their defensive formation. That's our cue, Ryan told his team. Approach pattern Delta. The shuttle glided toward the flagship's docking bay, broadcasting the identification codes they had stolen from a captured Zolaxian officer. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the bay doors began to open. They bought it, Olivia whispered in amazement. Ryan's expression remained grim. Getting in was always the easy part. It's what comes next that'll kill us. The shuttle landed among rows of similar craft. Ryan's team waited until a group of Zolaxians passed by, then slipped out, moving quickly through the ship's corridors toward the central command hub. Twice they nearly ran into patrols. Once they had to hide in a storage compartment filled with what looked disturbingly like human remains. But they pressed on, guided by maps created from the memories of escaped prisoners. Meanwhile, across the globe, hidden human resistance cells activated powerful EM pulse generators. These wouldn't affect the Zolaxians directly, but they would create a background noise that might mask the main attack when it came. On the flagship, Ryan's team reached the central computer core. Olivia immediately set to work, connecting Patricia's device to the alien systems while the others stood guard. How long? Ryan asked, watching the entrance. 5 minutes to upload, another 2 for it to propagate through their network, Olivia replied, her fingers flying over the controls. Make it 3 minutes total, Ryan said. We don't have an alarm blared. The Zalaxians had discovered them. Keep working, Ryan ordered, raising his weapon. We'll hold them off. The first Zalaxians appeared at the end of the corridor, tall and graceful even in their battle armor. Ryan and his team opened fire, using weapons modified to penetrate. Alien shields. The battle was brief and brutal. 2 of Ryan's team fell in the first exchange. The Zalaxians kept coming, seemingly endless. 1 minute more, Olivia called, not looking up from her work. Ryan took a hit to his shoulder, the alien weapon burning through his armor. He kept firing, knowing that every second counted. Upload complete, Olivia shouted. Initiating now. For a moment, nothing happened. The Zalaxians continued their advance, weapons raised. Ryan prepared for the end. Then it began. The nearest alien stumbled, dropping its weapon. Another fell to its knees, hands clutching at its head. Within seconds, all the Zalaxians in sight were writhing on the deck, making high-pitched sounds of agony. It's working, Olivia breathed. Similar scenes played out across the flagship and on the other command ships where the remaining strike teams had succeeded in their missions. Throughout the Zalaxian fleet, aliens collapsed as their neural implants betrayed them, sending waves of crippling pain through their bodies. For the first time since the war began, the invaders knew fear. These humans, these primitives they had so easily dismissed, had turned their greatest strength against them. In the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Powell received the news with cautious hope. The Zalaxians are in disarray, reported her communications officer. Their ships are breaking formation, some are even trying to flee the system. Admiral Foster stepped forward. Should we press the attack? Samantha Powell looked at the map, at the scattered red dots that now blinked erratically. She thought of the billions who had died, of the ruined cities and poisoned lands. Yes, she said coldly. No mercy. They gave us none. The tide had turned. The war was far from over, but for the first time humanity was no longer prey. They had become predators. The lunar base had once been humanity's pride, a stepping stone to the stars. Now it was a fortress. The dome that had housed scientists and explorers was reinforced with salvaged Zalaxian armor. Weapon emplacements dotted the gray landscape. Earth hung in the black sky, its once blue surface now scarred by war. Admiral Ellen Foster stood in the command center, watching as reports flowed in from across the solar system. 6 months had passed since Operation Thunderclap had given humanity its first real victory. 6 months of slow but steady progress. The Mars liberation is complete, Commander Paul Nelson reported. The last Zalaxian stronghold surrendered this morning. A cheer went up from the staff. Ellen allowed herself a small smile. After losing Mars early in the war, reclaiming the red planet was both practically and symbolically important. Casualties? She asked. Minimal on our side. The new shields based on Zalaxian technology worked better than expected, Ellen nodded. And the prisoners? Being processed according to protocol. We're gathering everything we can about their homeworld. The door slid open, and Susan Miller entered. The engineer had changed since her days on the Intrepid. She walked, with a slight limp from an injury sustained during a boarding action, and her once kind eyes had hardened. But her mind was as sharp as ever. The retrofit is complete, she announced. The Vengeance is ready for action. The Vengeance was something new in human warfare. A captured Zalaxian battlecruiser, modified to accommodate human pilots and crew. It was the first of what they hoped would be many. Excellent, Ellen said. Select your crew. Training begins tomorrow. Susan hesitated. With respect, Admiral, I'd like to lead this mission myself. Ellen studied the younger woman. You're not a military commander, Susan. No, Susan agreed. But I understand their technology better than anyone, and I've been fighting them since the beginning. After a moment, Ellen nodded. Very well. Captain Miller it is. As Susan left to prepare, Ellen turned back to the display showing the solar system. Red markers for Zolaxian forces were now confined to the outer reaches. Blue markers for human forces were pushing outward from Earth and Mars. They're on the defensive now, Paul observed, pulling back to regroup. Which gives us time to strengthen our position, Ellen replied, and to see if Ambassador Winters has made any progress. In a secure chamber on another level of the lunar base, Ambassador Kevin Winters sat across from a being unlike any human had seen before. The Exari was roughly humanoid, but with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with its emotions, currently a cautious yellow-green. My government has reviewed your evidence, the Exari said, its voice translated by a device on the table between them. The actions of the Zolaxian Empire against your people match their behavior in our sector. Kevin leaned forward. Then you understand why we seek alliance. The Exari's skin rippled to a deeper green. We understand, yes, but your species is unknown to us. The Galactic Council will require assurances that humans will not become another threat should the Zolaxians be defeated. What kind of assurances? Limitations on your expansion, oversight of your military development, cultural exchange programs to ensure mutual understanding. Kevin considered this. Before the war, such terms might have been unacceptable to a proud, independent Earth. But now, with half of humanity dead and their planet in ruins, survival took precedence over pride. I believe my government will agree to reasonable terms, he said carefully. But we require immediate military assistance against the Zolaxian forces in our system. The Exari's skin shifted to a decisive blue. Agreed. A battle group will arrive within your month. In return, we will need access to your neural disruption technology. Done, Kevin said, offering his hand in the human gesture of agreement. The Exari hesitated, then extended one of its 4 hands. As they touched, a new chapter in human history began. First contact with a species that didn't want to exterminate them. On Earth, the recovery was slow but steady. President Powell toured a reclaimed district of what had once been Chicago. Buildings were being rebuilt using a mixture of human and salvaged alien technology. Gardens were planted in city squares, beginning the long process of healing the damaged soil. We've started small manufacturing in the underground facilities, reported the local administrator, Frank Peterson. Basic necessities first, but we hope to restart more advanced production soon. Samantha nodded, watching as children played in a newly constructed park. There were too few children now, a whole generation decimated by war. But those who survived would grow up in a world that was rebuilding, not dying. Any trouble with the Zolaxian technology? She asked. Some compatibility issues, Frank admitted. But Dr. Clark's team has been a tremendous help. Patricia Clark had become the head of Earth's Recovered Technology Division. Her understanding of Zolaxian systems, combined with her husband's research, had given humanity the tools to not just survive, but begin to thrive again. In orbit above Mars, the Vengeance prepared for its first mission under human control. Captain Susan Miller walked the corridors that had once been filled with the enemy, who had destroyed her first ship and killed her friends. Engine room reports all systems functional, said her first officer, Jack Wilson. The security officer from the Intrepid had followed her from one ship to another, one battle to the next. Weapons? Modified and ready. The targeting systems actually work better with human operators than with their original neural interfaces. Susan allowed herself a grim smile. Plot a course to the Jupiter perimeter. That's where the latest Zolaxian activity was reported. The massive ship pulled away from Mars. Other vessels joined it. A fleet of human-designed ships incorporating alien technology, and a few more captured Zolaxian vessels like the Vengeance. It was the largest offensive force humanity had fielded since the war began. The Zolaxians had established a defensive line near the orbit of Jupiter, using the large gas giant and its moons for cover, just as humans had done in the early days of the war. Their strategy was familiar. They were learning from their enemy. But humans were learning faster. The battle began with a feint toward Ganymede, drawing Zolaxian forces to defend the moon. Then the main human fleet emerged from behind Callisto, led by the Vengeance. The Zolaxians hesitated when they saw one of their own ships leading the attack, a fatal pause. Susan's voice was cold as she gave the order. All ships commence firing. The battle lasted less than an hour. The Zolaxian forces, already demoralized by months of defeat and cut off from reinforcements, broke quickly. Some ships attempted to surrender, others fled toward the outer system. Shall we pursue the retreating vessels? Jack asked. Susan thought of the Intrepid, of Captain Carter and the crew who had died in that first unprovoked attack. No mercy, she replied. Those were our orders. The human fleet hunted down the fleeing Zolaxians one by one. By the time the battle ended, the Jupiter perimeter was clear of enemy forces. Set course for Saturn, Susan ordered. We keep pushing them back. In the weeks that followed, humanity reclaimed the entire inner system. The Exari battle group arrived as promised, bringing with them knowledge of Zolaxian territory beyond Sol. For the first time, humans learned the location of the enemy's homeworld. In the Lunar Base Command Center, Admiral Foster convened a war council to discuss the next phase. President Powell attended via secure link from Earth. Ambassador Winters represented the Exari Alliance. The time has come to take the war to them, Ellen said, displaying a map of nearby star systems. With the Exari's help, we now have the means to reach Zolaxian space. Their empire spans 27 star systems, Kevin added. But their homeworld, Zolax Prime, is their center of government and military command. Can we reach it? Samantha asked. The journey would take 3 months with our current drives, Ellen replied. But the Exari have provided specifications for more efficient engines. Susan's team believes they can be implemented within weeks. And when we reach their home, Paul asked, what then? The room fell silent. The question that had been on everyone's mind was finally spoken aloud. What would humanity do when they had the power to do to the Zolaxians what had nearly been done to them? President Powell's voice was measured when she spoke. We will offer them the chance to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, she didn't need to finish the sentence. As the meeting concluded, Ellen found herself standing next to Kevin. Do you think the Exari will support us if we have to take extreme measures? She asked quietly. Kevin's expression was grim. The Zolaxians have made many enemies. No one will weep for them. The war was entering its final phase. Human ships, now equipped with Exari-enhanced drives, pushed beyond the solar system into interstellar space. The hunters had become the hunted, and across the galaxy, other species began to take notice of these newcomers who had done the impossible, fought back from the brink of extinction to challenge one of the galaxy's most feared powers. The whisper began to spread from world to world. Beware the humans. They do not know how to surrender. They only know how to win or die trying. 3 years had passed since the Zolaxians attacked Earth. 3 years of struggle, adaptation, and transformation. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival had become something else entirely, a war of retribution. The human Exari fleet hung in space near the Proxima Centauri system, the last staging point before Zolaxian territory. 40 warships, half of them human, the other half from their alien allies. At the center of the formation was the Vengeance, now upgraded with the best technology from 3 different species. On the bridge, Captain Susan Miller reviewed the final attack plans. Her dark hair was streaked with gray now, her face lined with the weight of command. Beside her stood Intelligence Officer Laura Bennett, a quiet woman whose skill at interpreting alien communications had proven invaluable. The Zolaxian High Command has responded to our ultimatum, Laura reported. They refused to surrender. Susan nodded, not surprised. They still don't understand what they're facing. Their communications reveal something interesting, Laura continued. They refer to Earth as the Death World and to humans as the Comeback species. There's genuine fear in their transmissions. Good, Susan said. They should be afraid. She turned to her communications officer. Signal all ships. We proceed as planned. The human Exari fleet jumped into hyperspace. using drive technology that Earth scientists had never dreamed of before the war. The journey to the Zolaxian home system took mere hours instead of the months once required. They emerged into chaos. The Zolaxians had assembled their defense fleet, but it was smaller than intelligence had suggested. Many of their ships were outdated models, hastily recalled from other parts of their empire. "They're overextended," Jack Wilson observed from the tactical station. "They've been fighting wars on too many fronts." "Their mistake," Susan replied. "Commence attack pattern Omega." The human ships moved in perfect coordination, each captain executing their part of the plan with precision born from years of fighting for survival. The Exari vessels followed, adding their unique weapons to the assault. The Zolaxian defense crumbled faster than expected. Their ships fought ferociously but without cohesion. The neural network that had once been their advantage was now a liability. They were afraid to use it fully, knowing humans had compromised it before. Within hours, the outer defense platforms were destroyed. The human Exari fleet pressed toward Zolax Prime, the blue-green homeworld of their enemy. In orbit above the planet, the Zolaxian Royal Battle Station prepared for a last stand. It was massive, a city in space protected by energy shields stronger than anything humans had encountered. "All ships, target their main power conduits," Susan ordered. Continuous fire. The combined firepower of the fleet hammered against the station's shields. Slowly, they began to weaken. "Captain," Laura called urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from the station. They're asking to negotiate." Susan's expression didn't change. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a Zolaxian adorned with elaborate markings and jewelry, clearly a high-ranking leader. Its black eyes showed no emotion, but its voice, translated by their computers, held a note Susan had never heard from their kind before. Desperation. "Enough," the Zolaxian said. "You have proven your point. We ask for terms." Susan thought of Earth's ruined cities, of the billions dead, of Captain Carter and the Intrepid destroyed without warning or mercy. "3 years ago, your forces attacked an Earth vessel without provocation," she said coldly. "When we asked why after we captured some of your officers, they said it was because you considered us primitive and unworthy of respect. A species to be harvested, not negotiated with." The Zolaxian leader made a gesture that might have been acknowledgement. "Mistakes were made, but further bloodshed serves no purpose. Surely your species understands the concept of mercy." "We understand it," Susan replied. "We simply choose not to extend it to you." She cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. "Continue the attack." The bombardment resumed. The battle station's shields failed section by section. But before the killing blow could be struck, another transmission came through, this time from Admiral Foster aboard the Earth flagship Defiance. "Captain Miller, stand down," Ellen ordered. Susan frowned. "Admiral?" "New orders from Earth." "President, Powell has agreed to conditional surrender terms. The Zolaxians will relinquish all conquered territories, pay reparations, and submit to disarmament. In return, we spare their homeworld." Susan's hand tightened on the edge of her console. "After everything they've done..." "This isn't about forgiveness," Ellen interrupted. "It's about who we choose to be going forward. We've proven our point. The galaxy knows what happens when you attack humans. We don't need to become the monsters we fought." After a long moment, Susan nodded. "All ships, cease fire." The Proxima Centauri Accords were signed aboard the Vengeance 1 week later. The Zolaxian Supreme Leader, flanked by nervous guards, faced President Powell across a simple table. Representatives from the Exari and other species who had suffered under Zolaxian rule watched with satisfaction. "Sign," Samantha said simply, pushing the document forward. The Supreme Leader's hand trembled slightly as it made the marks that ended its empire's dominance. Captain Frank Morrison of the Earth battleship Vengeance accepted the ceremonial surrender of the Zolaxian fleet. The once proud aliens bowed their heads as they handed over their command codes. "Remember this day," Frank told them. Remember what happened when you thought humans would be easy prey. In the years that followed, humanity expanded throughout the stars. The technology gained during the war accelerated Earth's recovery and growth. New colonies were established, not through conquest, but through careful exploration and negotiation. The alliance with the Exari grew stronger, leading to membership in the Galactic Council that governed relations between species. But the shadow of the war remained. Whenever human ships appeared in a new system, they were treated with wary respect. Whenever human diplomats entered negotiations, they were given careful attention. The story of how a single planet of primitives had defeated the mighty Zolaxian Empire spread from world to world, growing with each telling. 10 years after the war, Ambassador Kevin Winters attended a summit on a distant world called Nebulon, Phi. During a formal dinner, he overheard a conversation between two alien diplomats from a species humans had not yet encountered. "Should be careful about expanding into that sector," one was saying. "It borders human space." "Are they really as dangerous as the stories say?" the second asked. The first diplomat lowered its voice. "More dangerous. My cousin served in the Exari fleet during the Great War. He said he watched a single human ship take on 3 Zolaxian cruisers without hesitation. The humans don't know how to surrender, and they never forget an enemy. But they're so physically unimpressive. No natural weapons, no armor. That's the most frightening thing about them," the first diplomat replied. "They don't need claws, or poison, or great strength. They have something worse. They learn, they adapt, they use their enemy's strength against them, and they never ever stop." Kevin smiled slightly as he sipped his drink. The alien's fear was exaggerated, of course, but not entirely unfounded. Humanity had learned harsh lessons from the war. Never again would they be caught unprepared. Never again would they trust blindly. And never again would they be underestimated. End. A quiet corner of the rebuilt city of New Geneva on Earth, a memorial stood to those lost in the war. It was a simple stone obelisk with a single phrase carved in every human language, that we might live among the stars. Beside it, a smaller monument held the names of the Intrepid's crew, the first casualties in humanity's trial by fire. Captain William Carter's name was at the top, a reminder of how it all began. An old woman with graying red hair placed flowers at the base of the monument. Susan Miller, now retired from space service, came here every year on the anniversary. She remembered her captain, her crewmates, and the long journey from that first desperate escape pod to humanity's place among the stars. A group of alien tourists, Exari, Nebulon, and even a few young Zolaxians, watched respectfully from a distance. Their guide spoke quietly, explaining the significance of the memorial. Susan caught fragments of the explanation. First contact. Unprovoked attack turned the tide, changed the galaxy. As she walked away, she passed close to the group. The aliens fell silent, their body language showing a mixture of respect and unease. The Zolaxians in particular seemed to shrink. Back slightly, Susan nodded politely to them and continued on her way. She didn't need to say anything. The mere presence of a human veteran, one who had fought in what the galaxy now called the Great War, was enough to make even the proudest aliens remember the lesson their ancestors had learned. Beware the humans. Even the whisper of their name should make you pause, for they are the species that came back from the edge of extinction, turned the weapons of their enemies against them, and showed the galaxy that appearances can be deceiving. They look harmless, but their true strength lies not in their bodies but in their unbreakable will, and they never forget.